Welcome back for part 2. Now, I'm trying to get these videos out as I have time, so nobody feel pressured to, because when you get notified that there's a new video, don't feel pressured to, watch it right away, just whenever you have time, because there'll be days where I won't be able to do any, and so there's no worries there. So yeah, here we go. Part 2 for the MATHAY versus Seven Noahide Laws. And I have not pre-read these since they were published, so let's get straight into it and go through it as we go. And this is part 2 of the December 1st, 2019 issue. The masterpiece of deception, the masterpiece of deviltry. Now, I'm going to just go through this preface real quick because it sets the main points. So the important thing is about this is a warning of the third angel. And so it's a discussion on the 7 Noahides. So down here. And I wish this had a pointer like the, well, maybe it does. Oh, look at that. I found it. So it's a discussion on the 7 Noahide Laws. So I'll say 7 L's. It's in respect to the doctrine of God. So this is the biggest issue because it's a matter of worship, as Revelation 14 reveals. And don't forget that, Paul said he comes in flaming fire, taking vengeance on those that know not God and that obey not the gospel of our Lord Jesus Christ. So here we have our everlasting gospel and the Godhead clearly defined that it's important for us to understand. And also the omega, because the alpha was the first one, and then omega is the omega of deadly heresies. You recall the messenger of the Lord trembled for the people when it came to the omega of deadly heresies. When you start getting into understanding this, it is trembling. The First Amendment of the U.S. Constitution has been compromised concerning the law prohibiting the establishment of religion, and this is what the detail about the 7 N's concerns. Hold on one second. Let's see if I've got a. I don't know if it doesn't look like that's going to go away. Unless I don't use it. Well, there you go. So I'll use my mouse. I'm on the right page. Yes. So here we go. The adoption of the 7 L's, in fact, brings to fruition the omega. And it is timely to understand why the 7 N's expose the Arian teaching of the doctrine of God. Now, remember this Arian teaching was being taught in the 1888 with Jesus being brought forth and born, begotten. So far back, can't grasp it, but it's almost like saying it was saying the fact is he was brought forth. He didn't have a beginning, but so long ago, we can't put our finger on it. Therefore, the presentation requires undivided attention, and some parts are striking in its candidness and conclusions. And may God bless your understanding. And so with prayer, we pray, Father in heaven, we want to understand the warnings of all three angels. And we pray that your Holy Spirit will open this to myself and our readers and viewers who are reading these thought papers, who are viewing these videos, and right now, grant eyes to see, ears to hear, and an understanding heart. In Jesus' name, amen. I will say now, readers will reach a fork in the road about the issues of Gnosticism and spiritualism that has woven its way into the ranks of separated Adventism. In fact, it may surprise you to discover that Wagner would not have been aware that some of his conclusions about the doctrine of God were in fact Gnostic, in its deceptive sense. Spiritualism was little published in the late 1800s, albeit it was making a resurgence with various practitioners at the time of the epic message of Christ and his righteousness at the GC session in 1888, the 1888 message in Verity. Suffice it to say, the messenger of the Lord did point the finger at the alpha of deadly heresies with the Holy Flesh movement and the work Living Temple by Kellogg. She said the omega would follow. And that's just a note. Further explanation. So this, as I may have said, was originally speaking of the masterpiece of deception, because this is the masterpiece of deviltry, which is part 2, but that's what we published first. And then we went back and we published this masterpiece of deception, and this is what we'll be covering next. In these presentations, there'll be 6 of these on the Noahide Laws, and then 6 on the masterpiece of deception, covering chapters 1 through 12. And you can always ask for a free PDF copy of this manuscript. These are in the description box below. And that dealt with the Triune Trinity. What follows is a complementary presentation part 2. And it's a masterpiece of deviltry, okay? And it's at its very best. Now, what I want to do is just zoom this in a little bit. Bigger. Okay. This presentation sets out the alpha and omega of deadly heresies. A warning is given by the messenger of the Lord, which is in respect to the doctrine of God. The deviltry is outstanding. And I believe I'll bump this right up to the very biggest. I believe I can make it. Yep. Bible evidence unfolds how the doctrine of God features foremost in the end events of Revelation 13 and 12. An emphasis in Revelation 14 with additional warnings in 19 and 22, and has a unique setting, Deuteronomy 6, the Shema, okay, when considered with Isaiah 2, the law that goes forth. All right, so think of this law and see, you know what, I think it's time we had just a real quick look at it. Isaiah 2:1, the word that Isaiah the son of Amos saw concerning Judah and Jerusalem. So this is the word that he saw. And notice it doesn't say this. Well, and it shall come to pass in the last days. Okay, so here's the warning: that the mountain of the Lord's house shall be established in the top of the mountains, and shall be exalted above the hills, and all nations shall flow unto it. And catch this: many people shall go and say. Notice you didn't have a "thus saith the Lord." Many people shall go and say, "Come, and let us go up to the mountain of the Lord, to the house of the God of Jacob, and he will teach us of his ways, and we will walk in his paths, for out of Zion shall go forth the law." So think Seven Noahide Laws? Question mark. Okay. And the word of the Lord from Jerusalem. But here it's not saying, the Lord's not saying the word of the Lord is going to go forth out of Jerusalem. The people are saying the word of the Lord is going to go out of Jerusalem. Anybody can say that. But out of Zion shall go forth the law. Okay. And then it gets into the beating their swords into plowshares, spears into pruning hooks. And we're going to be getting into that, hopefully, at some point with regarding the Denver murals. So if you want to have a quick look at that after this video, have a look at Denver murals. And I've flown in and out of Denver. Unfortunately, I didn't get to see them firsthand. Here, many people shall say, and this law goes out of Jerusalem. So think of this Isaiah 2, and with regard to Micah 4 too, as well. Think of Deuteronomy 6, the Shema. Okay. Judaism's interpretation is one God. All right. That's in one hand. In the other hand is the 7 Noahide Laws and a blasphemy and a capital punishment. Okay. And think of Isaiah 2, this law that goes out of Jerusalem. So this is something to be aware of and concerned. Recent events concerning the rule of law in our lifetime present compelling evidence. What, in fact, makes this memo important, our fullest attention, is what the messengers of the Lord cautioned about the Alpha and then warned unreservedly concerning the Omega of deadly heresies, where the seducing spirits of doctrines of devils was so powerful that when the Omega would follow, she trembled for the people. So here, when I first left the state of Maine, it was to go through Vermont and Massachusetts to hear a testimony against these sentiments, Living Temple. So this Living Temple contains the Alpha of deadly heresies. I knew that the Omega would follow in a little while, and I trembled for the people. A depth of deception exists hitherto, which is nearly impossible to discern. The messenger of the Lord was compelled to speak. I am so compelled. The rule of law. So here's the Bible background. Micah stated a rule of law would issue from Jerusalem, and that's Micah 4. And let's see. And that should bring up the, here we go, Micah 4. Okay, so here again you have this, beat their swords into plowshares, spears into pruning hooks. Last days, mountain of the Lord shall be established in the top of the mountains. It shall be exalted above the hills, and people shall flow unto it. Okay, come, let us go up to the mountain of the Lord, to the house of the God of Jacob. He will teach us of his ways, and we will walk in his paths. For the law shall go forth of Zion, and the word of the Lord from Jerusalem. Okay, so very, very similar. Isaiah stated a rule of law is decreed from Jerusalem. So between Micah 4 and Isaiah 2, in 1892, the messengers of the Lord stated there would be an oppressive law. Okay. There's your link. Observe the phrasing in this message. doesn't mention or say a national Sunday law, an oppressive law. And again, when you think of a law that has a fine as opposed to a law that has a capital punishment with having your head cut off, seems a bit more oppressive. Observe the phrasing in this message. Sorry, I read that, but here's the question. What did this update in Review and Herald, 1892, with absolute, no context of a national Sunday law mean as to be regarded with the lamb-like beast, who speaks as a dragon and adopts the warning message of the first beast? Good question. So what did this update here, with no context of a national Sunday law, mean in regarded to with this lamb-like beast, Revelation 13, and the warning? Seems like it has something to do with this lamb-like beast, and adopts the warning message of the first beast. Okay, because that beast is, they're going to be saying, that you need to do this and that, or this and that is going to happen. How would this update in Review and Herald 1892 be related to another update found in Counsels to Writers and Editors, page 23 and 24? Okay, so have a think about that. So again, here's your United States Constitution, Amendment 1, Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion. These 7 Noahide laws that were signed into law in 1991, and every year after that, is an establishment of religion. Article 1 of the Establishment Clause reads, no law respecting the establishment of religion. But what happened in recent times where we ought to have noted about events and related to Revelation 13 and the existence of an oppressive law? What happened in recent times in relation to Revelation 13? Oppressive law? How did the enemy of righteousness get around the First Amendment? Recent events of public law in 1991. This public law, joint resolution of Congress. There's your source, and there's a link in the thought paper, which will be down below from the Congress's website. Here's the excerpted. Designate March 26, 91, Education Day. But again, concerning the 7 Noahide Laws, joint resolution called Education Day USA, HJ 104EH, okay? 91, to designate March 26th Education Day. All right, skipping down to here. Whereas these ethical values and principles have been the bedrock of society from the dawn of civilization, when they were known as the 7 Noahide Laws. That should tell you, wait a minute, that's religious. Okay, and like we said in the last video, there's, no problem with a law that's right. The problem is that these are counterfeit to the 10 Commandment covenant. They are a breach of the First Amendment, and they're there on the books. All they have to do is be called up. Okay? Whereas without these ethical values and principles of edifice of civilization stands in serious peril of returning to chaos. So if chaos is created, these can be, wait a minute, here's 7 Noahide laws, okay? And you can pause and read this whole thing. But notice it was March 91. It's concerning 7 Noahide laws. And one of those laws has to do with blasphemy. It carries capital punishment. And it has to do with an interpretation of the Shema. And this has to do with the rabbi and the Lubavitch movement. Now, if that's not, enacting a law, making a law in respect to an establishment of religion, I don't know what is. Okay, so I'll read this. Whereas in tribute to this great spiritual leader, the Rebbe, this, his 90th year, will be seen as one of education giving, the year in which we turn to education and charity to return the world to the moral and ethical values contained in the 7 Noahide laws. So returning the world to the moral and ethical values contained in the 7 Noahide laws. So don't kill, don't murder, no adultery. Look, there's no problem with that. But when you have one of those 7 Noahide laws, that if you believe the Bible's version of the Godhead, that, without a doubt, goes against and will be breaking one of these 7 Noahide laws, this should concern you. It concerns me. Will I give up what I believe so I don't come into conflict with these 7 Noahide laws? No. I pray God never. Resolved by the Senate and House of Representatives of the United States of America and Congress assembled at March 26, 91, the start of the 90th year of Rabbi Menachem Schneerson, leader of the worldwide Lubavitch movement, is designated as Education Day USA. The President is required to issue a proclamation calling upon the people of the United States to observe such day with appropriate ceremonies and activities. Here, a test clerk question. The first thing to figure out, how did the public law of 91 breach the First Amendment, right? Okay. So as you read, what is in fact public law of the U.S. Code was authorized and issued under a joint resolution of Congress back in 91. A plain reading of the facts confirms the First Amendment was breached. The resolution introduces a new concept of the new rule of law, the 7 Noahide laws. See the U.S. President's United States endorsing the 7 Noahide laws. So there's a picture. You click on that. Again, the link is below. Check again what Revelation 13 is saying. Does this public law require each President of the United States to issue a proclamation, in fact, saying what Revelation 13, 11 to 12 is saying? Huh? Let's read that. Verses 11 to 12, and I beheld another beast coming up out of the earth, and he had 2 horns like a lamb, and he spake as a dragon. So here's this lamb-like beast, second beast of Revelation 13. And he exerciseth all the power of the first beast before him. Verse 2, you have that leopard beast, feet like a bear and mouth of a lion, okay? So he exerciseth all the power of the first beast before him, and causes the earth and them which dwell therein to worship the first beast, whose deadly wound was healed. So this is after the first beast, one of its head, as it says, were wounded to death. Okay, one of the heads. That doesn't say Pope. One of the heads. Okay. His deadly wound was healed, and all the world wondered after the beast. And this is why this has to be future, because in the biblical context, verse 5, the 42 months, comes after they worshipped, which comes after they wondered, which comes after the healing, which comes after the deadly wound, which again can't be 538 plus 1260 to 1798. Okay. 1260 has to come after the deadly wound and its healing. And if 1798, it's not, and this is not denying what happened in 1798. Yes, you know, what happened to the Pope by, you know, Napoleon's general, absolutely correct. But the interpretation, a mistake in some of the figures on the chart. The man in linen has removed his hand, specifically by telling us, because of the daily, the vision concerning the daily and the transgression, unto when? He says, unto 1844. And that daily concerns the 1290. So you have to have the 1290 ending in 1844. So from 554, we have 1260 to 1814. Napoleon abdicated. 5 kings, Justinian, Charlemagne, Otto the Great, Charles V, and Napoleon. 5 kings. But Revelation 17 says that there are 7 kings. So 5 are fallen. 1 is Victor, King Victor Emmanuel, and the other is not yet come, and when he cometh, he must continue a short space. Why? Because 13 tells you one of his heads were wounded to death. And then it's when it's healed, you flip back over to 17, and the beast that was, okay, this is after the healing, the beast that was and is not, even he is the 8th and is of the 7, and goeth into perdition. Where else do we have someone going into perdition? 2 Thessalonians. So you have to draw the obvious conclusions from what the Bible is telling you. The 2 Thessalonians guy has to be the 8th, because he goes right up until Christ's coming. But the woman doesn't. She's destroyed by the 10 horns, which are 10 kings, in 17:12 of Revelation. They destroy the woman in the rest of this chapter. They hate the whore, right? Which this 7th head that's lasts for a short time and receives a deadly wound has to be the same character as Daniel 11. Comes to his end and none shall help him. Okay, and this gets back to this fake Armageddon. Okay, from the thought paper that we published. You know, go to 5agendas.com, scroll down, click on newsletters, and I forget which issue it was, but just scroll down and you'll see the title, Fake Armageddon. Have a look at that. There's a fake Armageddon. Okay, and this is what Daniel 11 is trying to tell us. Okay, so you know, we need to keep reviewing this and get this down pat, because that's the only way for me to understand it. You know, I started working on a chart. It's still in the process, but for me, that's what helps me. You know, and you know, if it helps you, great. And it helps to be able to draw it out on a whiteboard. You know, Daniel 11. He should come to his end and none shall help him. Revelation 13, one of his heads is wounded. Revelation 17, the 7th, that continues for a short space. It's all talking about the same identity. And then comes the 8th, 2 Thessalonians. okay? And this is why it's important to understand what this fake Armageddon is, because a lot of people mistake that as being the Armageddon from Revelation 16, yeah. 16:16, Armageddon, Harmoed, Mount of the Congregation, which is Jerusalem, which is in a valley, okay? So check again what Revelation 13 is saying, and that was just a quick rundown. It's telling you, look, there's going to be this second beast exercising the power of the first beast, and it does great wonders, makes fire come down from heaven on the earth in the sight of men, deceiveth them that dwell on the earth by the means of those miracles which he had power to do in the sight of the beast. And he says that they should make an image, okay? And then comes in your, your mark in your right hand. See, here's where it says your right hand, or your forehead. Remember the Shema, the true, the genuine, bind them upon your hand, write them as frontlets. 2, in beginning, the truth of the Godhead, not Arianism, not Gnosticism, emanationism, and all this other blasphemous stuff, okay? Because pretty much it boils down to we're either going to have the genuine Shema, or we're going to have the counterfeit in the right hand and the forehead, And there's been all this, years and years and years of, pictures that you see, with a 666 tattoo or, a barcode. It's a matter of worship. That if possible deceive the very elect. Triune Trinity, monotheism, 3 co-eternal, literal Son of God, begotten in eternity, beyond our comprehension stuff. Does this public law require, yeah, read that. So does this public law require each president to issue a proclamation, in fact saying what Revelation 13 is saying? What did we just read? It has power to exercise like the first beast. It says to those making an image. We need to have an open mind, and we need to keep studying. Studies should show thyself approved. If we say, oh, the mark of the beast is this, and this is this, and we drive our stakes into the ground and make them unmovable, time comes when they need to be moved. How can we heed any warning? And the path of the just shines more and more into the perfect day and advancing light of truth. We get stuck with old ideas and interpretations. And I'm not saying that the old ideas are wrong. There's some old ideas that if it matches up with the Bible, they're absolutely true. But our problem is Laodicean theology. And just, H doesn't make error truth. Okay? So what are the 7 Noahides? There's your link from Wikipedia. The 7 laws listed by Tosefta, dated to 220 CE, and the Babylonian Talmud, dated to 300 CE, are the prohibition of idolatry, the prohibition of murder, theft, sexual immorality, the prohibition of blasphemy. So it's these 2 that are highlighted in yellow that we need to be especially careful of and paying attention to. Because, if you're not going to go out and murder or, steal or commit sexual immorality, you don't have anything to really worry about. Unless you're unjustly, accused. But I know right now, for me personally, because I believe John 1:1 and what Revelation 4 and 5 is telling me, and I'm taking and heeding the warning of the first angel to fear God and worship him that made. And that means that in beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. Two in beginning, two eternal divines. And this is the masterpiece of divinity. This first and fifth law concerning idolatry and blasphemy, is concerning. 6, the prohibition of eating flesh taken from an animal while it's still alive, the requirement of maintaining courts to provide legal recourse. So this punishment. So the Talmud laid down the statutory punishment for transgressing any one of the 7 Noahide laws, but not other parts of the Noahide code, as capital punishment, okay? By decapitation, which is considered one of the lightest of the 4 modes of execution of criminals. According to some opinions, punishment is the same whether the individual transgresses with knowledge of the law or is ignorant of the law. 7 Noahide laws, capital punishment, decapitation, transgressing any one of the 7, blasphemy. So the interpretation, mainstream Christianity's and the Judaism's interpretation of the Shema is one God. And I'm going to be, and hopefully you'll be standing there, you'll be saying, no. John 1:1. There were 2 in beginning. Okay? And then be able to explain that, at Bethlehem, okay, because Philippians 2 says he emptied himself of the form of God. God is spirit. So when he emptied himself of that form of God, we have the Spirit of Christ. And for the first time, we have God manifest in the flesh. 3, a heavenly trio in the New Testament. Okay? And you're standing there, and this is what makes your perfect testimony, along with Christ's imputed righteousness. Because you can, with John 1:1, prove that, and with Melchizedek, Hebrews 7, prove that the Word, the Logos, was eternal and has eternal righteousness and wants to impute that to you. Because he's the lamb slain from the foundation of the world. Okay? And the names were in the Lamb's Book of Life. Those who reject, their names are taken out of the Lamb's Book of Life. Those that, watch and keep their garments, their names are retained in the Lamb's Book of Life and have the imputed righteousness of Christ. But you're going to be, standing there and giving this testimony. But the law says, the Shema, only one God. And you're saying no, too. And 2 in the Old Testament, 3 in the New. You don't think that they're going to consider that blasphemy? Capital punishment? Decapitation? But that's one of the lightest of the 4 modes of execution. Public endorsement, United States Congress. The 7 laws of Noah were recognized by the United States Congress in the preamble to the 1991 bill that established Education Day in honor of the birthday of Rabbi Menachem Mendel Schneerson, the leader of the Chabad movement. Whereas Congress recognized the historical tradition of ethical values and principles which are the basis of civilized society and upon which our great nation was founded, whereas these ethical values and principles have been the bedrock of society from the dawn of civilization when they were known as 7 Noahide Laws. Recent law, recent reality. Okay. The above information was taken from Wiki, is explaining to our dull eyes how the First Amendment of the Constitution was defeated, where it states Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion. The fact is, the First and fifth Noahides, from what we just saw, has everything to do with worship, the doctrine of God, and the third angel's warning. Third angel's warning, not to worship. Okay? This system. If any man worship the beast in his image and receive his mark in his forehead or in his hand. Hear, Israel, the Lord our God is one Lord. But you know, the truth of the Shema is saying two, oneness and duality working together as one. Its clause for capital punishment is chilling and has everything to do with Revelation 13. Why? Okay. So consider this. And he causeth all, both small and great, rich and poor, free and bond, to receive a mark in their right hand or in their forehead, and that no man might buy or sell, save that he had the mark of, or the name of the beast, or the number of his name. Here is wisdom. Let him that hath understanding count the number of the beast. It's the number of a man. 666. Okay. And I know there's a lot of, interpretation, speculation out there, but the important thing we need to keep in mind is not trying to, set everything down. I mean, it feels better and it's comforting to know what everything is, but rather be warned about this. So when it does come, you can, there it is. That's what it is. Okay. So it has everything to do with Revelation 13, and in contradistinction, God's warning in Revelation 13, the third angel. Why is that there? Hold on a second. There's just I might have to go out of this view. I'll just clip that out of there for now. I'll just make this bigger. Therefore, how does this rule of law even relate to the Trinitarian or Arian understanding of the doctrine of God? The answer is, of course, who is God? Who is worthy of worship? Okay. The Seven Noahide Laws insist their God is not to be considered falsely. So they're saying there's only one God, the Shema of Israel. And you're saying, well, and don't think that they don't, can't interpret and understand this as well as you. Hear, O Israel, the Lord our God is echad, oneness and duality. So they insist their God is not to be considered falsely or blasphemed, let alone ignored in the acceptance of who is actually to be worshipped, as said by the first angel. For failing to follow the rule of law prophesied by Micah 4 and Isaiah 2, that's capital punishment, statutory punishment for transgressing any one of the seven laws. Be it known, this issue on the Godhead is a sustained attack on John 1:1. When you say there's only one God, that's an attack on the first angel that says there was two in the beginning, fear God and worship him that made. And John 1:1, where it reveals two eternal divines, not one, not three. And John 1:1, remember, does not contain a father-son relationship, which, right, because you think to yourself, it was a decreed relationship, it was assumed, because Isaiah 9 reveals that this word or logos was also eternal Father. Number two, an unrelenting attack on the eternal identity of he who made. And incredibly, the deception is in fact accepted and pronounced and coming from all quarters in and including the independence in and of Adventism. Many insist, oh, that's a monstrous claim. Alas, the deception can be proven. Let's face it, any serious Bible student familiar with the end time prophecy ought to know by checking out their belief from the Bible as to precisely who were the Elohim in the beginning, anarche, as set forth by John in John 1:1-3. Why? The sharp claws of the first beast sorry, the galah, the others outside start flying around and she starts squawking. So let's face it, any serious Bible student familiar with end time prophecy ought to know by checking out their belief from the Bible and the Bible only as to precisely who were the Elohim in beginning as set forth by John. Why? The sharp claws of the first beast, okay, Revelation 13, are woven into the U.S. Code, defeating the First Amendment. It gives the second beast all the reason, according to the rule of law. Therefore, to the being fully informed why the Trinity is gross heresy is one thing. You should become fully aware why Arian Father-Son doctrine holds a deeper sense of deception. Because either way, these two teachings mean you lose. Okay? So whether the Arian Father-Son, you lose. Or the Trinity. Why do you lose? Because how can you, for one thing, how can you receive his imputed eternal righteousness when you're rejecting that eternal righteousness by rejecting that he was eternal? These are sinister doctrines, and we need to stand up and meet them, since both teach a Father and Son in eternity. And John 1:1 does not teach that. This point must never be forgotten. Why? Because when you understand why the Arian teaching is more deceptive than the Trinity, what this means is adherents of this version of the doctrine of God do not have an argument against the first or the second beast of Revelation 13. That fact must not be overlooked. So these adherents to this version, whether Trinity or Arian, okay, and why the Arian is more deceptive, they don't have an argument against this first or second beast. Why? Because they're saying the exact same thing. This means those who accept these two versions will be sidelined. You're not a threat. I want to be a threat. Don't you? Stand for truth. And they will not be attacked by the dragon when it comes to Revelation 12:17. When that dragon goes to make war with the remnant of her seed. Obviously, you want to be a part of that remnant, right? It's not going to be very nice. Okay, but you're being warned. And John 1:1 is so clear. How is this related to the Seven Noahide Laws? Well, the problem and confusion all stems with the belief that the National Sunday Law triggers the events of Revelation 13. And I'm not saying that, the National Sunday Law isn't going to raise its ugly head. I mean, it has in the past, okay? But it's not going to be the issue. Because again, you don't worship a day. You either worship he who made, on the Sabbath, or you worship the beast on whatever day of the week they choose. Okay? Because remember, the Jews aren't going to stop worshiping on the Sabbath. You think the Friday keepers will? But what can they all agree on? One God. So they won't be, you know, attacked by this Seven Noahide Laws and the blasphemy and capital punishment and decapitation. The problem and confusion all stems with the belief that the National Sunday Law triggers the events of Revelation 13, 11, and 12, and 15, and everyone that is waiting for the National Sunday Law to arrive. That's where we pause. So this is part 2, so wait for part 3, and we'll get into that very shortly. So God bless. Till next time.